Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Walker. What if you were the recipient of a diagnosis of stage 3 colon cancer? Young man in the prime of your life, had surgery, and the doctors were trying to feed you something that made you aware that maybe, just maybe, what they were putting into your body, even at that hospital, was not going to bring you the health and the recovery you needed. Well, our next guest has had that exact experience. Best-selling author, world-renowned speaker, and global health coach, Kris was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer in 2003 at 26 years old. He had surgery, but instead of chemotherapy, he used nutrition and natural therapy to heal himself. He's appeared and lectured at major health and wellness conferences, including the Food Revolution Summit, the Integrated Health Conference, and his recent keynote speech at the Truth About Cancer Conference. He has appeared on national radio and television shows, including The Ricky Lake Show and The Lisa Oz Show. He was also featured in the Truth About Cancer docuseries and the documentary film The C Word. Kris inspires countless people to take control of their health and reverse disease with a radical transformation of diet and lifestyle. And you can find more information about KrisBeatsCancer.com. He's the author of the newly released best-selling book, Kris Beat Cancer, A Comprehensive Plan for Healing Naturally. Kris, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with you.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. The book released at #1 in every category regarding cancer, nutrition, and healing. And again, you have brought the world's attention to a very holistic approach, not New Agey, but actually biblical, biblically sound wisdom applied to what we now know about food, what we know about health, what we know about our own bodies. And I kind of want to get a little bit backwards with you as to life before the diagnosis for you, both your faith journey and your physical journey. What was that like for you?
Well, yeah, leading up to my diagnosis, I was a real estate investor. I was newly married and entrepreneurial, and I was trying to build a business and, basically going 90 miles an hour, trying to become successful, and eating a lot of junk food, fast food, processed food, eating the typical American diet, standard American diet, and really had no idea what was happening inside my body, but I started to have some abdominal pain, and that was my first indication there was something wrong. And I ignored it for many months, just hoping that maybe it would resolve itself, whatever it was. But it got progressively worse. Eventually, I had a colonoscopy, and they told me, "You've got colon cancer."
Now, what was your faith journey like while you were going through all this?
Well, of course, being 26 and diagnosed with colon cancer was devastating. Absolutely life-changing in every way. But in the middle of the fear and the shock and the uncertainty and anxiety, the first verse that I thought of that came to mind was Romans 8:28, which says, God works all things for the good of those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. And so, I was really unhappy. I didn't understand why I was sick. I was kind of mad at God about it. I was a believer at that time. I was serving in the church. I've been playing on the worship team on Sunday mornings for years. I was really doing my best to follow Jesus, to be a follower of Christ, right? To be good, to do good in the world and to be good. And so, the first thing you're thinking is why isn't some child molester getting cancer? Why am I the guy getting cancer? And yeah, so I was mad about it. It just felt like it was just unfair, right? And And so I was struggling with all those things, but I remembered that verse, and I just chose to believe it. I chose to believe that God was going to work this for my good somehow. And I didn't like it, but I was just like, okay, God, your word says that you work all things for my good, so I'm just going to exercise my faith, because that's all faith really is, right? Is choosing to believe.
Right.
Right? And so I just said, I'm going to believe this. And then as I kind of dug into the scripture more, I found another really encouraging verse, to me, which was in Psalm 34, which says, the righteous may have many afflictions, but the Lord delivers them from them all. And I was just like, man, this is me. Like, this is my verse right here. You know, like, the Lord delivers them from them all. Like, I'm going to believe this, like, that he's going to deliver me. So, you know, right you know, I had peace in the middle of the storm, right? And that was brewing. And it was really just the beginning of the storm. But I found peace and comfort, and when I just exercised my faith, and I looked to God for deliverance. So that was a big part right away in the journey. But the problem that so many cancer patients have is that when they're diagnosed, it's a whirlwind of fear. And many people in the cancer industry, doctors, nurses, and practitioners, use fear to motivate patients to take action, right? And it's basically, if you don't do what I say, you're going to die. You have to do these treatments. There's nothing else that can help you, or you're going to die. And so patients are often rushed in before they understand what's happening to them. And I was in that position, right? I was told, well, you need to have surgery right away. We got to get this thing out of you before it spreads and kills you. They wanted to have me in surgery within just a few days. And this is only a couple days before Christmas. And I was able to delay the surgery until December 30th because I just was depressed and I didn't want to be in the hospital on Christmas, right? So I went in and had the surgery. They took out a third of my colon. They took out the tumor. And they saw that it had spread to surrounding lymph nodes, which they removed everything they could see that was obviously cancerous. But when I woke up, they said, hey, listen, it's worse than we thought. We thought you would be stage 2, which is curable by surgery, but you're stage 3C, and you're going to need 9 to 12 months of chemotherapy, you know, if you want to try to keep this thing from coming back. And what they understood was that when you have cancer, it's never contained in one tumor. You always have circulating cancer stem cells and circulating tumor cells in other parts of your body. They've already left the primary tumor site, and they're looking for other places to set up camp and start multiplying and form new lesions or tumors. So the doctors knew this guy, I mean, he's got stage 3 colon cancer. He's got cancer cells in his blood, right? And he's going to need chemo. So I, initially accepted like more bad news. Like, okay, well, I guess this is my life. I'm going to become a full-blown cancer patient, And I'd never seen anyone go through it. I'd never had any friends or family go through it. I mean, it was completely new to me in every way. But I had seen chemo patients in the world. I knew what they looked like, and it made a dramatic impression on me. Every time I saw someone with advanced cancer out in the world, it was just like, wow. I mean, it's shocking, sometimes to see the physical condition that people are in as a result of treatment. So, I had some resistance to it, but I just sort of accepted, like, okay, I guess this is my life. Now, a couple of things happened in the hospital, and I think you know this story, but for your listeners that don't, 2 things happened in the hospital that were really strange to me. And the first was the very first meal that they served me after removing a third of my large intestine, right, was a sloppy Joe. And the sloppy Joe is just such a funny menu item because no one really likes them. They don't serve them in restaurants, right? The only place you can really get a sloppy Joe, if you had asked me before they gave me one in the hospital, I would have said, I don't know, like summer camp or the military or maybe prison.
Right.
And to my surprise, like, oh, wow, they're serving sloppy joes in the hospital to sick people, to the guy with colon cancer. By the way, this other part of just sort of unbelievable irony is that red meat is a known cause of colon cancer. It's a group 2 carcinogen. So they're literally giving the guy with colon cancer food that's known to cause colon cancer. So I didn't know that at the time. I've learned it since. But despite my little knowledge, I still was like, ugh, like, why are they serving this terrible food in the hospital? This is awful. To sick people. Like, I knew the difference between healthy food and, you know, junk food, cafeteria food, whatever. So then the other thing that happened was, on the day they told me I could go home, the surgeon came in to check on me one more time, and we were just having a conversation about what was next, and I said, well, you know, is there any food I need to avoid? Because I didn't want to eat the wrong thing and screw up the surgery somehow. And he said, no, just don't lift anything heavier than a beer. And so I thought, okay, so I guess it doesn't matter what I eat. I can just go home and eat sloppy joes and drink beer, as far as they're concerned, right? But obviously that didn't make sense to me. I thought, well, why is there such a huge disconnect between healthy living, healthy eating, nutrition, and the healthcare industry, which we know for most cases is not about healthcare at all. It's about sick care. Very little of what they do promotes health. It's more oriented toward managing the symptoms of disease. So now, that's not to say if you get shot, you know, go to the emergency room, they can save your life, okay? But when we're talking about chronic diseases that are caused by our diet and lifestyle choices, modern medicine has very little to offer. But the good news is these are things that we can change, we can heal, conditions we can heal. But anyway, so I go home from the hospital, and I'm recovering from surgery, and I'm thinking about my life and my future, and thinking about what my life is going to be like suffering through chemotherapy. And just the idea of it didn't make sense to me. I had this internal resistance to it. Again, I didn't have any friends or family members that I could reference and say like, oh, I saw somebody go through it, you know. I just, in my spirit, I felt like it was wrong for me. And I felt like it would do me more harm than good. And I think we need to listen to our instincts and intuition. I think everyone watching this or listening to this program can remember a time in their life where their instincts, their intuition, their gut told them, like, don't do that, right? And they ignored it. They did it anyway. And then they realized, that was a mistake, right? And I've had lots of those mistakes in my life. I try to learn from them, still make stupid mistakes, but, you know, that's human nature. So I, again, had this resistance to it, and I just felt like it was not the right thing for me. I felt really vulnerable, and I felt like it would really do me a lot of harm. And so my wife and I prayed about it, and I said, God, if there's another way besides chemotherapy, just, you know, will you please show me? I don't know what to do. I'm confused. And help, right? It's just a cry for help. And also just, you know, in the midst of my asking for help, I'm also just saying, thank you, you know, thank you for my life. Thank you for my health. Thank you for healing me. I'm believing for healing, right? And just confessing the word and the scripture over my situation. And a couple days later, I got a book. And this book shows up. It was sent to me from a man in Alaska who knew my dad. I'm in Tennessee. And I started reading this book, and the guy who wrote it was a former pastor, and he had watched family members and church members suffer through chemotherapy treatments and die. And then he got colon cancer and decided, well, you know, I don't want to do what they did because it didn't work for them. And he happened to have a friend who was a health nut, and his friend said, hey, man, you need to go back to the Garden of Eden. You need to get on a diet of raw fruits and vegetables, and you should probably start drinking a lot of carrot juice. Carrot juice is really good for you. And so this is George Malcolmus. So George Malcolmus, that's what he decides to do. And within about a year, his tumor was gone. So I'm reading his story, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe this showed up. Like, this is exactly what I was looking for. I prayed, I asked for something, this showed up. And I just knew, like, this is it. This is the answer to my prayer. This is what I need to know. This is what I needed to do. And I had a huge epiphany. And I'm thankful to George Malcolmus for that epiphany. And the epiphany was, the way I'm living is killing me, right? Cancer is not bad luck. Less than 5% of cancers are genetic. So what does that leave you? That means up to 95% of cancers, and this is based on scientific research, not just Kris's harebrained idea, up to 95% of cancers are caused by diet, lifestyle, and environmental factors, right? Environmental pollution. And so when I realized, well, if the way I'm living is killing me, if this is my fault, if I caused or contributed to this disease in some way, then maybe I can cause and contribute to health, to healing it. And that was empowering. It was exciting. It was like, it gave me so much hope and optimism and enthusiasm about changing my life and helping my body heal, because the one solution I was being offered was a very destructive solution, as you know. Chemotherapy is destructive. It does not target cancer. It kills cells in your body from head to toe, and it causes a lot of collateral damage. And again, I don't tell people not to do chemotherapy, but one of the things I try to do is help cancer patients understand the benefits and risks of those treatments before they're rushed into them, right? Before they say yes out of fear, because we should never make a decision out of fear. If we're making a decision about our health and our future, it needs to be based on facts and faith, not fear.
Kris, as you tell your story, it becomes very apparent to me that your faith was the foundation, and when things didn't resonate with your faith, that this gift of discernment that God gives to every believer, whether or not we operated it or not, that you were beginning to discern that there was something amiss in this process that wasn't actually lining up with God's creative, God's redemptive, God's healing power, and that there were things in the kingdom that He had provided for you. You just had to dig for the answers. And so He sent you this pastor's book that began a process of you examining and re-examining through the lens of a believer. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be a believer, but this was what got you started, because you had already been equipped to believe in the truth of God's Word. And we didn't see disease hit the face of the earth for a very long time. We didn't see dis-ease, which is that discomfort that came from dietary discomfort, questionable foods, because in the beginning we were all vegetarians. It wasn't until after the flood that we were given meat to eat, and we became food for other animals. But the lifespans of those prior to the flood, it was nothing for somebody to live 700 or 800 years. Nothing. The oldest were in their 900s. Nothing. That was the average lifespan. And so they must have been doing something right to have Abraham at 100 and an 80-year-old wife who is barren conceive a child. They must have been vibrant enough with not low T and not a estrogen or whatever kind of hormonal imbalance. Things must have been ordained by God that He can do all the miraculous if we would grab hold of this. So you began grabbing a hold of some biblical truths that then began to take you down a path of exploring a new way of treating this temple that God had given you.
Yeah, that's a, you know, I have some very simple, I guess, core beliefs, and one of them is that I believe that God created the earth for us, and I believe that fruits and vegetables, right, that He made for us, the food that He made for us to eat, is good. It's the ideal diet for man. And, again, in the Garden of Eden, that is all that Adam and Eve ate, were fruits and vegetables, and probably ate more fruit if you think about it. Like, if you had fruit trees all around you, you'd probably go for those more than you would broccoli. But anyway, but yeah, the point is, so I thought, well, I looked at my own life, and I started to, the case that was, as I started to read and research, I was coming across information that was making this case that the reason we're all so sick is because we're eating way too much processed food, junk food, fast food, and way too much meat and dairy, way too many animals, like at an excessive amount. And if you think about it, you've probably heard this many times in your life. You've heard people say, well, everything in moderation, right? Well, okay, fair enough. Everything in moderation. Is eating meat 3 times a day moderation? I would say it's not. It's not moderation to eat an animal 3 times a day at every meal. In fact, that was something that only kings and the wealthiest people in the ancient world were able to do. And the poorest people lived on pulse, which is food from the earth, fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds, whole grains. So as I'm, again, learning and realizing these things, I just knew immediately this is what I had to do. I had to convert from a diet that was just tons of meat and dairy and processed food, fast food, junk food, to a diet that was, I'm going straight back to the Garden of Eden, raw fruits and vegetables, organic. That's it. I'm going to eat the cleanest, healthiest diet I possibly can. And I want to see what happens if I do this. And I got excited about the prospect of overdosing on nutrition, which is the way I kind of looked at it, and just giving my body an abundance, right, of all of the amazing vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, enzymes, and what we call phytonutrients, which are plant nutrients, giving my body all of these thousands of compounds and letting it use what it needs. And we know now, there are hundreds of thousands of published nutritional science studies, and we know that there are all these miraculous compounds in fruits and vegetables that can improve immune function, improve detoxification, improve digestion, improve brain function, kill cancer cells directly, prevent cancer from spreading, block the formation of blood vessels that tumors need to grow. And the more I read and researched, the more excited I got about the power of nutrition. And it's really simple stuff. It's not quackery. It's not miracle cures, magic potions or lotions. It's none of that, right? This is just going back to basic human nutrition, which is fruits and vegetables. So I converted to a raw food diet overnight. I went out and bought a juicer and huge bags, 25-pound bags of carrots. And I'm like, look, if it worked for this guy, maybe it can work for me. We're both humans, right? We basically have the same DNA with some differences, obviously, the way we look and our hair color, whatever, but we both are humans. So if his human body could heal colon cancer, maybe my human body can heal colon cancer. And I also, came to this realization too that, these are my cells. This is my DNA. Cancer is not a foreign invader, right? My body created this. And if my body created it, then maybe my body can heal it. But I realized, well, it's not healing it, so there's something wrong, right? We live in a cause and effect world. There's a reason why my body is not healing this. And if I want to heal it, I need to figure out what is causing or contributing to this disease, and I need to remove these factors from my life. So again, I'm coming at it from a place of really logic, right? I'm just thinking logically about the cause and effect, right? What's causing this? What's causing disease? What can cause health? Now, despite my excitement and enthusiasm, most of the people around me did not have the same sentiment. And as I started to tell people and people found out about what I was doing, I got a lot of opposition. And people were telling me, you got to do what the doctor says, you've got to do chemo. If there was something better, don't you think they would know about it? And alternative therapies, that doesn't work. I had a friend that tried that and they died. so I'm getting, people close to me are telling me these things, like passionately telling me I'm making a mistake. And so I came to this really difficult sort of mental and emotional predicament where I prayed, I got an answer that was clear to me, and everybody around me saying, no, it's wrong. What do you do? Fortunately for me, I am an only child. And so I've always been a bit of a lone wolf and a bit stubborn. And, so as hard as it was for me emotionally to feel like no one around me understood or supported me, I still knew this is what I have to do. Like, I've got to take control of my situation. I can't just be a passenger and cross my fingers and say a little prayer and hope for the best. And, there's a verse in James where it says, faith without works is dead, right? Well, what are works? Works is action, right? Taking action. And so, in my mind, I was demonstrating my faith in my body's ability to heal and in God leading me in the path of healing by taking action, right? So I was doing everything I could do to help myself, to help my body, to build up my temple, as you said, to rebuild my temple, and still trusting God in the process to lead me, right? So it was a partnership, It was partners in healing. So it's like me and Jesus, everybody else thinks I'm crazy, but this is what I'm going to do. And I also had to come to grips with the fact that, if I'm going to live or die, I'm going to do it on my terms. I'm not going to live or die on somebody else's terms. And I'm not going to get rushed into something that I don't want to do or that I don't understand. And so despite that, I still had to appease the people around me. And this is difficult because so many cancer patients are in the same predicament, right? Their instincts are telling them, like, probably shouldn't do this. It's destructive. It could hurt you, but everybody around them is saying, you have to. You got to do it. You got to do it for your wife, for your husband, for your children, for your parents, for whoever, right? And so I reluctantly agreed to go see the oncologist, and the appointment didn't go well. He basically told me that I had a 60% chance of living 5 years, which I thought, that's not great. 60% chance of living 5 years with treatment. That's like a coin toss almost. 60-40, 50-50. I didn't inspire much confidence. I asked him about the raw food diet, which I'd been on for 1 whole week. I was feeling really good. And he said, no, you can't do that. It'll fight the chemo. So he's telling me this super healthy diet that I had just started and was really starting to love was wrong, and I couldn't eat it if I did chemo. And I thought, well, man, that doesn't make any sense. And then he said, I said, well, are there any alternative therapies available? And at that point, his demeanor changed completely, and he just became very arrogant and condescending and just said, no, if you don't do chemotherapy, you're insane. And he's talking down to me and, sort of pulling all the tricks out of his bag psychologically to try to manipulate me into saying yes. And he did. He used fear and, all this stuff that he said, which I don't remember most of it, but it was enough to convince me, okay, I guess I have to do chemotherapy. And there was one weird thing that he said in the middle of it that my wife and I both remembered, because we were both in such a state of fear and anxiety, and it's, when you're in that state, your memory doesn't work really well. So it's hard to remember what was said or what. But he said one thing that jumped out, and he said, look, I'm not saying this because I need your business. Which at the time was so strange to hear. Like, I wasn't thinking about business, but it was almost like he was on the defensive, like, did kind of a Freudian slip or what I call the push away, a sales technique, right? Where it's like, I don't need your business. I'm saying this because I care about you, not because I want your money. But the reality is, private practice oncologists at that time, things have changed a little since then, but made up to 2/3 of their income from the profit off of chemotherapy drugs. 2/3 of their income comes from profit on the drugs. So, like, if you're in that position, you're like, I need to prescribe this drug to make a living. Well, that's not a good position to be in as a doctor, right? Because you're incentivized to prescribe chemo whether or not it's the best thing for the patient. And there have been a number of doctors that have gone to jail now for falsely prescribing chemotherapy when their patients didn't need it at all, and even when they didn't have cancer. So that's a whole other story, which I talk about in the book. But anyway, I walked out of that appointment. I made and went to the desk and made another appointment to come back and get a port put in a few weeks to start chemotherapy. And my wife and I walked to her car and sat in her car and just cried. You know, I just held hands and cried, and I choked out a prayer, and I was discouraged and fearful and hopeless. I was I was struggling with hopelessness in that moment. And, you know, that is what most cancer patients are dealing with. The cancer clinics are many times a fear factory. And they're just, there's so much fear injected into their hearts and into their minds that they can't make a rational, logical, faith-based decision. They're just making a decision out of fear. I just don't want to die. Just tell me what I can do to not die, right? And one of the most tragic things of all is that, you know, almost every cancer patient asks their doctor, like, why did I get cancer? You know, like, what do you think caused my cancer? And the doctors, you know, invariably many times say something like, well, you know, we don't know what caused it, but it's probably, you know, genetics, you know, or just maybe bad luck. And that is the worst possible thing you can tell a cancer patient, because the underlying message to that statement is there's nothing you did to cause or contribute to your disease. Despite the thousands of studies, we know what's causing cancer, right? We know that diet and lifestyle cause cancer. And I'll get to that in a second. But they're saying nothing you did. You know, we don't want you to feel bad about your situation. Here's a hug. Here's some sympathy for you. It's nothing you did. And because nothing you did contributed to your disease, there's nothing you can do to help yourself except for show up for treatment. Just make sure you show up for treatment, and then we'll take care of the rest. You just give us all of your power, right? And you become the powerless victim that everyone feels sorry for. And we'll do our best to love on you and give you donuts while you're getting chemo and get you a Coke out of the vending machine. And so that is, in my opinion, just borderline just malpractice to use that kind of psychological manipulation and to withhold information from a patient. So here's what let me unpack that a little bit. The number one cause of cancer is smoking. It's the number one cause, not just of lung cancer, of a dozen or more types of cancer in the body. Cigarettes, number one cause. And many cancer patients who smoke are not even told to stop smoking by their doctor. That's malpractice, right? We know that this caused your cancer. We know it can prevent you from healing, even responding to treatment, and yet you're not going to tell a patient to quit smoking. The number two cause of cancer, this is a big one, no pun intended, is obesity. Most people can guess that smoking is the number one cause of cancer, but 99 out of 100 people, if you ask them what's the number two cause of cancer, they say like pollution, you know, or whatever, but it's not. It's obesity. Because when you're overweight, your body produces excess hormones and estrogen, and fat cells, especially abdominal fat cells, produce chemicals in the body that promote inflammation and create an environment where cancer can grow. And so people who are obese, overweight and obese, have immune suppression, inflammation, and a pro-cancerous environment. And so this is not Kris's, again, not one of Kris's wild, harebrained ideas. This is from the International Agency for Research on Cancer, the World Health Organization. All the major governing bodies of cancer research on planet Earth agree. Smoking is number one cause, obesity is the number two cause. And obesity is quickly poised to overtake smoking as the number one cause. So, but patients aren't told this either, right? What are they told by their doctor? It doesn't matter what you eat. Go home and eat whatever you want. And they even send them home. Many hospitals send the patients home with a pamphlet that tells them what foods they should eat, which includes ice cream, yogurt, like high-calorie foods, milkshakes, like junk food, processed food, and, high amounts of meat and dairy, foods that fuel cancer growth. So it's just such a broken system. And again, I don't mean to throw any doctors under the bus, because doctors, most of them, are good people that really want to help, but they're trapped in a system that pays them really well despite the results. And they're also trapped in a system that gives them a very limited scope of tools that they can use to help a patient. So they're not even really practicing medicine anymore, right? Practicing implies experimentation, innovation, right? That's part of the process, but they're not allowed to practice medicine. They're not allowed to innovate. They are said, you can prescribe this or this or that, and that's all. Or else your medical license is at risk. So doctors aren't trained in nutrition. They have no nutritional training whatsoever. They're not trained in prevention, lifestyle medicine. They don't know how to help people get well. They just know how to treat diseases. And in many cases, that does not end up in curing the disease. It's just, managing the symptoms for a certain period of time. So, I've learned I didn't know any of this in January 2004, okay? I knew almost nothing. All I had was my intuition and my faith and, a couple books that I was finding one by one. And the wonderful thing about that time was the first person that supported me was my mom. And my mom actually had a big library of health and wellness books. She had books by Paul Bragg. She had just all of these books on natural health and healing and alternative cancer therapy. She had all these amazing books. She'd never had cancer or any diseases, but she had just always been fascinated by health and healing and obviously wanted to stay healthy. Had a subscription to Prevention magazine for probably 3 decades. And so that was kind of this really cool miracle in my life that my mom had stored up all these books for me, right? Not realizing that I would need them. But, and as I sort of began to read through and try to learn more and find more encouragement and validation for what I was doing, I found the same messaging over and over and over again. Raw fruits and vegetables, juicing, detoxification, and stress. So stress was another big component that I really want to talk about, because this is where your faith, there's a big faith component in stress as well. And stress is a root cause of many cancers and diseases. And so the way, so just to finish this little bit of my story, when it was time to go start chemo, to get the port put in anyway, the next step, I decided not to go. I just decided, you know what? This is not for me right now. And I just thought, I can always come back to this. I can always do it later, but I just don't feel good about it. What I feel really good about is building up my body. That's what I wanted to do. And that's what we call a holistic approach to health, is where you're looking at the whole body and saying, I need to improve my body's ability to heal, right? That's what I want to do. I want to build it up. I don't want to break it down anymore. And chemo breaks you down. So I just said, no, I don't want to do it right now. Most of the people around me did not like that. They thought I was going to die. They thought I was making a huge mistake. And that's when I was the most alone. But I quickly found support. I found a local naturopathic doctor who was incredibly encouraging and supportive, and he was also a believer. He referred me to an integrative MD, integrative oncologist, who also supported my decision. And he was more cautious about it, but he didn't try to talk me into anything that I didn't want to do. And he agreed to monitor my blood work and did IV vitamin C therapy for me and ordered some CT scans along the way to monitor, make sure the tumors weren't growing or whatever. So I assembled a team. And, that's the thing about when you step out in faith, right? When you step out into the unknown, that's when miracles happen, right? Miracles happen when you step out of the boat. If you stay in the boat, like Peter, stay in the bubble, stay in the safe zone where no one will criticize you, right? Where everybody, where you're just sort of doing what everybody tells you you're supposed to do, then, miracles don't really happen there, right? It's when you're really trusting God and saying, okay, like the way I looked at it was God was leading me into the jungle, right? This was uncharted territory. I had to hack my way through it alone in the dark, and I had no one else to rely on. I mean, it was like there was barely a path that a few people had gone through it, right? Overgrown path. And I'm trying to make my way through with little support. And so that really tested my faith a lot, but I just had to say, okay. I mean, there were so many days where I can just remember praying, just being like, it's just you and me, Jesus. I don't have anybody else right now. Like, and there were days where I was fighting with fear, because you don't know if you're getting better or worse from one day to the next. And, but, God's just so good. He's so good. He just constantly was giving me little reminders that he was with me, that I was on the right track. It's like, and if you've ever been hiking in the days before cell phones and GPS and all that, if you've ever been hiking, and there's usually always a point in the hike where you're like, are we lost? And you're like, okay, well, we're on the trail, let's just keep going. And then eventually you see a sign on a tree, right? You're like, okay, good, all right, yeah, all right, yes, this is definitely the way. And that's how it feels, dealing with cancer. It's like from one day to the next, you're like, am I lost? Am I doing the right thing? Am I getting better? Am I getting worse? I don't know. And you're just desperate for that little bit of encouragement, those reminders that you're on the right track. And God would just when I needed them, they would come into my life. People would come into my life, or new information, or whatever. And so just day by day, I just stayed the course, kept overdosing on fruits and vegetables and juicing and changing my life. And I got better and better. And I woke up, one day, and it had been almost 5 years. And I was like, I'm still alive. I'm still healthy. I feel great. And got another scan, no cancer. And that's when I started thinking about sharing my story publicly. Because I didn't really want to in the beginning. I was afraid of failure, I didn't really want to be the guy who didn't do chemo and then died and everybody knew, Like I didn't want that public humiliation and that legacy of failure and of being a fool, and which I would have had either way, whether I had gone public or not. But so I kept what I was doing to myself for the most part. I mean, the people around me knew, and people at church knew, and things like that. But for the most part, I just kept it to myself until I was convinced that I'm going to live. Like I've prevented this cancer from recurring. And whatever cancer cells in my body after surgery, I have built up my immune system so that it could identify and eliminate them, which is what a healthy immune system is supposed to do. So I started Kris Beat Cancer, which is a blog, krisbeatcancer.com, and started writing and making videos talking about what I did and talking about nutrition and healing. And then people started coming out of the woodwork. I started interviewing other people who had healed with nutrition and natural non-toxic therapies. And some of them didn't have surgery, didn't have any treatment, and healed. And then others that I've interviewed did all the treatments they were supposed to do, and the treatment failed, and then they still ended up healing it naturally after treatment failed. So I don't know, there's 70-ish now interviews. We're putting new ones out constantly of these just remarkable, wonderful healing stories. And, I want to say miraculous, but they're really not, In one way they are, in one way they're not. The body is miraculous in the sense that it is designed to self-heal. Like it is a miraculous design, right? But in that sense, it's healing is what it's supposed to do. So it's not a miracle at all, right? It's supposed to heal. So
Kris,
I've interviewed all these people and been sharing all these wonderful healing stories and information and science and research on the anti-cancer power of nutrition. And it's been 8 years that I've been running this blog. I did it 5 years just as a part-time passion. Then it just eventually grew to be kind of a big thing. And millions of people have been to the blog and watched my YouTube channel, all this stuff. It just happened over time. It wasn't an overnight thing, but just kind of gradually built. And then it took over my life a couple of years ago. And I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, between the book and the website, you clearly identify what we would call superfoods, super antioxidants, the best cancer-fighting vegetables, the best cancer-fighting fruits. You probably have one of the most fabulous recipes for the super salad that I've ever seen. And just to share with you, I'm a geriatric, according to the charts. So I'm Medicare. I go to older persons from the younger end, but nevertheless.
You get the senior discount.
But I get the senior discount. But I eat an Israeli diet, which is very, very high in vegetables and fish. Meat is lamb almost exclusively. Fish is always wild caught. Nothing. I actually am very opposed to things wrapped in plastic because that's a petroleum byproduct and things leak. So I have this argument at the organic. You give me a bag of carrots in a plastic bag, and you've taken this beautifully wonderful fresh product and you've wrapped it in a petroleum byproduct. How is that possibly organic when you've got these pollutants leaching into whatever it's touching? I want things that are unpackaged, and I'm kind of, maybe a little particular in that particular area of talking about organic. Everything's organic until it's not, because it all comes out of the earth until we start treating it with pesticides. So, the selection process, but what you've been able to do is you have been able to combine what others have not. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you as a guest on the program is the faith component of it was really what was the revelation for you that said, I'm going back to God's way of doing things, not man's way of doing things. And our survival rate and our health rate, and you actually saw leprosy. You saw diseases which were incurable cured. Naaman, for example, could have been cured instantly, but because of pride, he had to go through his little 7-time ordeal. But even when there was a spot, and we might call it a carcinoma or a melanoma that was brought to the priest, he would give him a prescription to leave the camp, to separate himself. And where was he sending him? He was sending him outside of the regular food environment, and he was sending him outside the camp to go eat whatever was wildly grown outside the camp, and then in a week's time present himself and then take a bath and be considered to be clean. Now, these are miraculous stories in the Bible that we fail to connect the dots of and saying, well, what did he do? He didn't go out, it didn't say he took his spear and he went hunting. It says he was put outside the camp. It doesn't say he took a bag of millet or a bag of grain or a bag. It says he was put outside the camp. What did he do for that week or that period of time? Well, he had to do what was naturally occurring, and we tend to not connect those dots. But you've done an outstanding job of keeping faith as the foundation, and I appreciate that because it does take a combination, and your summary of faith, food, exercise, right? And what is the fourth component? Because you have 4 very important points that you make.
Yep. The fourth, well, they can be arranged in a few different ways, but detoxification is another pretty significant component of health and healing, because there are many toxic chemical pollutants around us that are slowly poisoning us. They can be in the home, they can be in your workplace, or they can be in your neighborhood, right? So unfortunately, we live in an industrialized society, and there are tons of giant factories everywhere, and they're polluting the air, polluting the soil, polluting our drinking water, and polluting our food. And they're polluting many of the products that we use every day, chemical cleaning products, chemical body care products. So what I did was I just systematically, and I talk about this in the book, of course, but systematically started eliminating everything from my life that could be potentially toxic. Because you think about it like death of 1,000 cuts, right? It's not the shampoo. That's not the problem. It's the shampoo, the deodorant, the mouthwash, the toothpaste, the lotion, the makeup, the lipstick, the perfume. All of these, products contain potentially toxic compounds that mix together like a toxic soup in your bloodstream and cause what's called synergistic toxicity, which is they're more toxic when combined than they are alone. And so anyway, so that's something that really has to be addressed, is really cleaning up your environment and identifying things that could be making you sick. But on the faith level, the other big component which I alluded to a minute ago, which was stress. And I would be remiss if I ended this interview without talking about the power of forgiveness, because many of us are carrying around so much bitterness and resentment and unforgiveness toward people that have hurt us in the past. And when you carry resentment, you are creating a toxic environment in your body. You're living in a state of chronic stress, and that chronic stress elevates your stress hormones, which suppress your immune system and promote inflammation, much in the same way that obesity does. And many of us, because of our stress, we engage in health-destructive habits like overeating, like smoking, like drinking, like being a sex addict, like being a workaholic, right? And those habits create a vicious cycle, right? They're destructive. They produce more stress, and that stress produces more self-medication. And I have to also acknowledge that illegal and pharmaceutical drugs, which we use to self-medicate, also have damaging effects to the body. Some pharmaceuticals are known to cause cancer. They even say it in the commercials.
That's exactly right.
So to get to the root cause of this, you've got to forgive the people who've hurt you. So I made a decision very early in this process of healing just to turn my life upside down. I didn't want to leave anything on the table that could be hurting me and affecting me. And so I just decided I'm going to forgive. Like, I'm going to think back through my life. I'm going to close my eyes and get quiet and just let those memories come up and dig through all the memories in my life of people who've hurt me in any way, whether it's an insult on the playground when I was in 3rd grade, or whether it was a friend that betrayed my trust, or, someone that was intentionally cruel to me, or whatever. And I found that when you choose to forgive, when you just say, God, I forgive them. By the way, forgiveness is a choice. It's not a feeling. You choose to forgive. You say, God, I forgive them. I'm giving them to you. They're all yours. I'm not going to carry it anymore, right? They're all yours. And I'm asking you to bless them. And, I learned that from Jesus. Jesus has the best teachings on forgiveness of anyone. He said, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. What else did he say? He said, if you don't forgive on earth, don't expect your Heavenly Father to forgive you.
Amen.
Right? He won't. That's
Amen.
Pretty scary. If that's enough reason right there to forgive. Forget all the health benefits, eternity's at stake. And even on the cross, one of the last things he said was, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
And that's powerful.
Kris Wark, author of Kris Beat Cancer, A Comprehensive Plan for Healing Naturally. There are so many different resources out there, but this is the testimony. And the Bible tells us we are overcomers by the word of our testimony, and as you heard in Kris's own words, and the blood of the Lamb. If you're facing a diagnosis, you're living in fear. Job said, that which I fear the most has come upon me. If you're living with the fear, you've heard the word cancer in the vocabulary of your doctor in regards to you, there is something you can do. You might be one that believes in augmenting. You may be the one who believes in replacing. You may be the one who says there's things I can do during. Whatever that is, explore the possibilities of what God can do through what He's already provided for us. And oddly enough, most of those chemotherapy chemicals are derivatives of plants, of tree barks, of naturally occurring resources, but in a moderation of diet as opposed to an infusion, they have an entirely different effect. And you can take back control over your body, which is the temple of the Lord. I take no medications. I take good food, good diet, good rest, forgive, and I learned a lot of lessons from Kris Wark, who himself has beat cancer. The website is krisbeatcancer.com, and you can find out all about him and this fabulous book, #1 best-selling author, #1 best-selling book on the topic, which is the word of the day, which is cancer. We hear more diagnoses all the time, and it's our food. It's not just what you're eating, but as Kris clearly stated, it's also what's eating you, and that is unforgiveness and a bitter root. Take control back over your life. Get a copy of this today. Visit ignitingnation.com, click on Books and Media, and click on the book cover and get to know Kris Wark through his website, krisbeatcancer.com, and this fabulous book. Kris Wark, thank you so much for sharing your story here on Revealing the Truth.
Thank you.
God bless you, my friend. We're going to take a
God bless you.
We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring in the next edition of Revealing the Truth.